Easter Sunday, 1900. Off the coast of Antikythera, Greece. Valerios Stais surfaces too fast. His helmet breaks water first, then shoulders. Then he's clawing at the bolts with hands that won't work properly because the pressure change makes his fingers feel like sausages stuffed into gloves 2 sizes too small. Bodies! The word comes out as a gasp. He's ripping off his helmet before his dive partner can reach him. Bodies everywhere, dozens of them. Captain Dimitrios Kondos is 47. He's spent 30 years diving for sponges in these waters, and he's seen enough nitrogen narcosis to recognize it, that rapture of the deep that makes divers hallucinate at 140 feet, makes them see mermaids singing, makes them think they can breathe water, makes them do stupid things that get them killed. Elias is at that edge where panic meets conviction, eyes wide and unfocused. How many bodies? Kondos keeps his voice calm, the voice he uses for spooked horses and terrified men. Dozens! Men, women, horses, all dead, just lying there on the bottom like they're sleeping. Kondos looks at his crew. 4 divers in various stages of suiting up, all staring at Elias like he's broken. All thinking the same thing, nitrogen narcosis. I'm going down. His crew protests immediately. 2 dives in 1 day breaks protocol. Dangerous for a man his age. But Kondos has a rule he's lived by for 3 decades. Never leave a mystery unsolved at sea. The descent takes 4 minutes, down through clear blue water that darkens to twilight. His ears pop twice. Pressure builds behind his eyes. Breathing sounds loud inside the copper helmet. Mechanical, each breath a conscious act. The bottom materializes slowly through the gloom. Rocky, scattered debris, shadows that could be anything. Then he sees what Elias saw. An arm reaching toward him through the water. Fingers extended in perfect anatomical detail. For 1 irrational second, his heart stops. He believes. Then 30 years of training takes over. He kicks closer, hand extended. Bronze, cold metal, a statue. Kondos grabs the arm. 40 pounds, maybe more. His lungs already burning from the depth. Pressure change pounding against his skull. But inside his helmet, he's laughing. He breaks surface carrying proof. Bronze, oxidized green, but unmistakably crafted by human hands. Elias, you idiot! His voice carries across the water. It's a shipwreck. The bodies are statues. They spend the next 9 months salvaging that wreck. Dangerous work. 1 diver gets the bend so bad he's paralyzed for life. Another drowns when his airline tangles in the debris. But they keep diving because this is the find of a lifetime. The kind of discovery that makes careers and fortunes. Bronze statues emerge from the depths. Marble sculptures with features still sharp after 2 millennia. Gold jewelry that gleams when the corrosion is cleaned away. Ancient wine jars, their seals still intact. The cargo of some wealthy Roman merchant ship that sank 2,000 years ago carrying treasures home from Greece. Among those treasures, mixed in with all that obvious wealth, sits a corroded lump. Bronze and wood, fused together by time and salt water, size of a shoebox, heavy, worthless compared to the statues and gold. Kondos pulls it up himself on one of the final dives, turns it over in his gloved hands underwater, seawater streaming through his fingers. Worth keeping? One of his divers asks when they surface. It's heavy. Bronze, probably. Might have some value melted down. Might not. Bring it up, Kondos decides. Let the museum people figure it out. They almost throw it back into the sea. Almost. 2 years later, that corroded lump sits forgotten in a storage room at the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. The statues are on display. The gold jewelry draws crowds. Newspapers print photographs of beautiful marble faces emerging from ancient waters. Nobody photographs the lump. Valerios Stais examines it on a Tuesday morning in May 1902 because nobody else will. He's 38, the museum's least prestigious archaeologist, the one they assign miscellaneous artifacts to while important scholars study important finds. His office is in the basement, literally. A converted storage room that still smells like old rope and mildew. His name gets left off exhibition credits. He doesn't mind, actually likes it. Being unimportant means being left alone with the artifacts. The lump split as it dried, probably during transport from the coast. The crack runs clean through the middle, making it even less interesting to everyone else, damaged goods. But cracks reveal what's hidden inside. Stais has a jeweler's loupe, cheap one he bought himself because the museum wouldn't provide one. Magnification brings him a quiet kind of joy most people don't understand. He holds the loupe to his eye and peers into the crack. Goes very still. There are gears inside. Bronze gears, not decorative, not symbolic, actual mechanical gears, dozens of them, different sizes, teeth interlocking with mathematical precision like clockwork. But clockwork doesn't exist yet, not in 60 BCE. Stais sets down the loupe carefully. His coffee went cold an hour ago. He doesn't remember drinking any of it. His hands are shaking slightly as he picks up the artifact again, heavier than it looks. The bronze solid and real under all that green corrosion. Now that he knows what to look for, he can see the circular patterns through the crack, the geometric relationships. Mathematical precision preserved in metal. Inscriptions, too, tiny Greek letters covering the visible surfaces. He can only read fragments through the corrosion, but what he can read is astronomical terminology. Sun, moon, zodiac, technical language. This isn't decoration, this is function. Stais does what junior archaeologists do when they find something impossible. He calls his supervisor. Dr. Nicholas Politis arrives in 15 minutes, a serious man, efficient. Doesn't suffer fools or waste time on junior researchers who think every broken pot is revolutionary. He's already annoyed before he reaches Stais's basement office. "This better be important, Stais." Stais hands him the loupe without a word. Points to the crack. Politis looks again. His expression doesn't change, but his breathing does, quick and shallow. He straightens, meets Stais's eyes. "Get everyone, now." Within an hour, 6 senior archaeologists crowd into Stais's cramped basement workspace, all of them arguing over each other, voices rising. Medieval astrolabe must have fallen into the wreck site later. Impossible. It's fused to the original ship's wood. The corrosion patterns match. Then someone's playing an elaborate hoax. On a wreck sitting in 140 feet of water for 2,000 years? How would they even... The arguments circle like water draining, astrolabe, hoax, contamination, misidentification. Nobody wants to say what they're all thinking, what the evidence clearly shows. Stais listens, doesn't interrupt. Junior archaeologists who interrupt senior scholars don't stay employed long. But he's studying the artifact while they argue, counting the visible gears through the crack, noting the ratios between different gear sizes. The relationships aren't random. They're mathematical, purposeful, the kind of precision that predicts, calculates. Someone made this deliberately, someone who understood geometry, astronomy, mechanical engineering at a level that shouldn't exist for another 1,500 years. Someone in ancient Greece. What if... Stais speaks quietly, but everyone stops. 6 pairs of eyes turn toward him. What if it's exactly what it appears to be, a gear mechanism from the 1st century BCE? The silence that follows feels heavy. Pressurized. Dr. Politis, to his credit, doesn't dismiss it immediately. That's impossible, Stais. So are a lot of things, Stais replies, until we find proof they existed. Stais spends the next 30 years trying to prove he's not crazy. He documents every gear he can see through the corrosion, every inscription fragment, every detail visible to the naked eye. His eyes go bad from the strain he gets reading glasses, then stronger reading glasses. Finally, he convinces the museum to buy a microscope for other purposes, then commandeers it for his own use when nobody's looking. He publishes papers in small journals, academic corners where fringe ideas live and die quietly. The papers are politely ignored. He presents at conferences when he can get speaking slots. Audiences are polite. Some even seem genuinely interested. Most are openly skeptical. After his presentations, colleagues smile and change the subject quickly. Stais and his mysterious machine, they say when he's not around. Sometimes when he is. Poor fellow, lost in fantasy. He doesn't stop. Can't stop. Because he's seen it, held it in his hands, knows it's real with a certainty that borders on religious faith. But knowing something is real isn't enough when everyone else has decided what's possible. Stais dies in 1923 of pneumonia. Sudden. His last words to his assistant, a young woman who actually believed his theories, are whispered through labored breathing. Someone will understand it eventually. Maybe not in my lifetime, but someone. His notes fill 17 archive boxes. His photographs number in the hundreds. His drawings are meticulous, each gear traced with patient precision, all of it archived in the museum basement, stored next to broken pottery and miscellaneous bronze fragments nobody wants to study. The mechanism stays in storage for decades, sometimes displayed in cases labeled miscellaneous bronze work or navigation instruments, origin unknown. A puzzle that doesn't fit anywhere in the accepted history of technology. 28 years after Stais dies, Derek de Solla Price opens his mail in New Haven, Connecticut. January 1951. He's 36, physics professor at Yale. Published a well-received book on medieval scientific instruments. Respectable career. Comfortable, but not remarkable. The kind of academic life that pays the bills and earns tenure without generating headlines. The letter is from Athens. They're updating their archaeological catalog. Would Professor Price, given his expertise in historical instruments, mind looking at X-ray films of a peculiar artifact recovered from a shipwreck? They've enclosed the films for his preliminary assessment. Price holds the X-ray images up to his office window. Afternoon light streams through the negatives. He stops breathing. He's looking at the skeleton of a machine. Gears, dozens of them. Arranged in complex geometric relationships he recognizes from his work on medieval clockwork spiral patterns. Differential gear systems. Engineering sophistication that shouldn't exist until at least 1400 CE. The catalog notes say this artifact is from the 1st century BCE. His hands shake as he reads the documentation again. Recovered 1900, studied by an archaeologist named Stais, largely ignored by the scientific community since stored in Athens. Price grabs his phone. Long-distance calls to Greece are expensive, but he doesn't care. "I need to see it," he tells the museum curator. "When can I get a flight?" 3 days later, he's standing in that same basement where Stais worked, staring at the mechanism. It's smaller than he expected. More corroded. More fragmentary. The X-rays showed him the skeleton. Now he's looking at the flesh, broken and degraded but undeniably real. The young museum curator hovers nervously. "You can examine it here, Professor. We've set up a proper workspace with lighting." "I need better equipment than what you have here," Price interrupts. Not rudely, just certain. "A proper X-ray machine, computer time for analysis, and I need months, not days." "We've never allowed extended foreign access to—" "This," Price says, voice flat and factual, "is the most important technological artifact from ancient Greece, possibly from the entire ancient world. If you want it properly understood, you need to let me study it properly." The curator considers this. Young man, probably nervous about making decisions above his authority. "I'll speak to the director." Price gets his access. 3 months initially, then 6 months. Then they give up setting a deadline and just let him stay. He becomes a fixture at the museum. That eccentric American professor who's always in the basement with the corrupted bronze, working at all hours. He brings equipment, an X-ray machine better than anything the museum owns. Photography equipment that costs more than most researchers make in a year, measuring tools. Early computer access when he can arrange it through Yale. He works with obsessive precision. X-rays from every conceivable angle. Thousands of detailed measurements. Mathematical analysis of gear ratios. Comparisons with later systems. Medieval clocks. Renaissance calculators. Slowly, across months that blur into years, he reverse engineers what the ancient Greeks created. It's an astronomical calculator, an analog computer designed to predict the positions of celestial bodies. You turn a handle on the side. Gears rotate at different speeds, each ratio corresponding to astronomical cycles observed by ancient astronomers. The moon gear turns 13.368 times per solar year. That's the actual ratio of lunar months to solar years, accurate to within the limits of ancient observations. There's a gear with exactly 223 teeth. The Saros cycle, the period after which lunar eclipses repeat in the same pattern. The Babylonians discovered this cycle through centuries of patient observation. But encoding it in a mechanical calculator? That's genius. Price builds reconstructions, models based on his measurements. They work. Wind the handle. Watch the bronze cosmos unfold in precisely calculated motion. But the mechanism haunts him. He dreams about gears turning in darkness, wakes at 3 a.m. with equations running through his head, reaching for the notepad he keeps by the bed. His wife notices him growing thinner, distracted. "Derek, you're not eating properly. You look—" She pauses, trying to find the right words. "You look possessed." "I'm fine." "You're obsessed." He doesn't argue. Obsessed is accurate. He can't explain the pull this mechanism has on him. This window into ancient brilliance that everyone ignored for decades. Every new measurement reveals something that shouldn't be possible. Every gear ratio shows knowledge that supposedly didn't exist. It's not just an artifact, it's proof that everything he thought he knew about the history of technology is wrong. Price publishes his findings in 1971. 50 dense pages of mathematical analysis and technical diagrams. Gears from the Greeks, the Antikythera Mechanism, a calendar computer from circa 80 BCE. The academic world explodes. Classicists insist it's impossible. Ancient Greeks couldn't have built this. Engineers examine his evidence, study his photographs, check his mathematics. Their conclusion shocks them. He's right. This is real. Physicists calculate the engineering sophistication. More complex than anything built for the next 1,000 years. Science journalists call it the most revolutionary archaeological discovery of the century. But Price knows he hasn't fully understood it. The mechanism still has secrets he can't crack with 1970s technology. Gears he can see but can't explain, functions he can only guess at. Inscriptions too corroded to read. He dreams about it for the rest of his life. Bronze gears turning in darkness. Ancient engineers trying to explain things just beyond his understanding, reaching, but never quite grasping. Price dies in 1983. Heart attack, sudden and unexpected. He's working on a revised paper when it happens, new ideas still forming in his mind. At his funeral, a colleague says, "Derek spent 30 years trying to understand one machine. I'm not sure if that's dedication or madness." "Both," Price's wife replies quietly. "Always both." September 2005. Athens. Two men stand in a museum conference room, sizing each other up like boxers before a match. Tony Freeth. British. 52. Mathematician by training, documentary filmmaker by profession. Silver hair, enthusiastic to the point of annoying talks with his hands. Terrible at reading social cues, brilliant at solving puzzles other people have given up on. Yanis Bitsakis. Greek. 41. Physicist working at the Hellenic Center for Marine Research. Dark hair graying at the temples, speaks 4 languages, skeptical of outsiders, protective of Greek heritage, very tired of foreign researchers who make big promises and leave with all the credit. They've been introduced by mutual contacts. Neither is entirely sure they want to work together. "I want to scan it," Freeth says. No small talk, straight to business. New CT scanner technology, 1/4 millimeter resolution. We could read inscriptions through the corrosion map every gear, finally understand what Price couldn't figure out. Bitsakis studies him with the expression of someone who's heard similar promises before. Every other international team has made similar claims, expensive equipment, big plans. Then they publish papers with their names prominent and Greek contributions buried in footnotes. Why should you be different? "Because I don't want credit," Freeth says, meeting his eyes directly. "I want answers, and I can't get them working alone. I need Greek partnership, Greek expertise, Greek institutional access." "So you can take the data back to London?" "So we can publish together. Equal credit, equal authorship. I'm completely serious about that." Bitsakis is quiet for a long moment. "Show me your equipment specifications first." They assemble a team over the next year. Engineers, archaeologists, computer scientists, museum conservators. Everyone brings expertise the others lack. Greek government grants permission with strict conditions. Greek researchers must be equal partners. Publications must credit Greek institutions prominently. The mechanism never leaves Greece under any circumstances. Freeth agrees to everything. But the partnership proves difficult from the start. Freeth wants to move fast, push boundaries. Bitsakis wants proper protocols, careful documentation. Cultural differences emerge. Working styles clash like tectonic plates grinding. "You can't just..." Bitsakis stops himself, takes a breath. "We have established procedures for handling irreplaceable artifacts." "Your procedures are slowing us down." "My procedures protect heritage that belongs to Greece, not to British documentary makers looking for content." The tension builds over weeks. Arguments about methodology, about credit, about whose name goes first on papers, about whether the BBC can film the research process. "This isn't your personal documentary project," Bitsakis says during one particularly heated argument in front of the whole team. "I never said it was." "Then why are there cameras filming everything we do?" "Because documenting the process matters. Showing people how science actually works, how discoveries actually happen. Showing people how brilliant Tony Freeth is." The room goes silent. Other team members suddenly find their equipment fascinating. Freeth's face flushes red. "That's not... I'm trying to share this discovery with yourself as the hero of the story." "Gentlemen." Dr. Maria Alexio, senior Greek conservator, 63 years old and taking precisely zero nonsense from anyone, steps physically between them. Either learn to work together, or both of you can go home. This mechanism deserves better than your egos. They stare at each other. Pride versus pride. Neither wants to back down. Finally, Freeth speaks, voice quieter. You're right. I have been. I'm sorry. Bitsakis nods stiffly. I've been unreasonably difficult as well. The project is more important than either of us. The work continues. The tension eases. Slowly, like ice melting. The custom CT scanner arrives in spring 2006, weighs several tons, cost €2 million. Setup takes 3 days of careful calibration. The mechanism is too fragile to move, so they bring the scanner to it, reassembling the equipment piece by piece in the Museum Conservation Lab. The team works in rotating shifts, 24-hour scanning operation, each fragment examined at multiple angles. Different X-ray energy levels. Different resolutions. The data files are enormous. Terabytes of information requiring custom software just to process. What they find changes everything. 37 gears confirmed. Precisely cut bronze, each with specific tooth counts, each ratio mathematically perfect. The engineering tolerances are impossibly good for hand manufacturing. The inscriptions become readable for the first time in 2,000 years. Tiny Greek text covering every available surface. Not decorative, not poetic. An instruction manual. They're reading an instruction manual for a machine built before Jesus was born. Turn the handle on the side. Freeth reads from the computer screen, showing magnified text, his voice shaking slightly. The pointers on the front dial show the position of the sun and moon in the zodiac. It's telling us how to use it, Bitsakis says. He's standing beside Freeth now, not arguing, just amazed. The ancient Greeks wrote us an instruction manual. One night at 3 a.m., Freeth is alone in the lab analyzing gear ratios, trying to understand one particular gear train. 4 gears working together in an unusual configuration he can't quite make sense of. The ratio keeps coming back to 254 to 127. He knows this ratio. The Metonic cycle. 19 solar years, almost exactly 235 lunar months. Ancient astronomers discovered that lunar phases repeat on the same calendar dates every 19 years. But the mechanical implementation of this ratio, the way the gears interact, differential gear system, the same mechanical principle used in the first mechanical clocks. Except mechanical clocks weren't invented until 1400 CE. This is from 60 BCE. The ancient Greeks beat the rest of human civilization by 1400 years. Freeth sits alone in the dark lab, cold coffee forgotten beside him, staring at the CT scan images glowing on multiple monitors. You knew, he whispers to the ancient engineer who built this. You understood differential gearing, epicyclic gear systems, ratios accurate to 3 decimal places. You knew things we thought we invented. He finds Bitsakis the next morning, shows him the differential gear analysis, the mathematical proof of what the ancient Greeks understood. Bitsakis stares at the numbers, the elegant mechanical ingenuity preserved in corroded bronze. If they could build this, what else did they make? That becomes the question that haunts both of them. Not just, how did they do this, but what else existed that we've lost? They start searching historical texts with new eyes. References that were always dismissed as poetic metaphor suddenly look literal. Cicero wrote about a sphere made by Archimedes, that showed the movements of sun, moon, and planets. Everyone assumed he was speaking metaphorically. "It wasn't metaphor," Freeth says, pulling up the Latin text. "Archimedes actually built one. The mechanism isn't unique. It's just the only one that survived." Ovid mentions mechanical models of the cosmos in his poetry, always assumed to be fancy. Pappus describes devices with wheels within wheels that calculated astronomical positions, dismissed as exaggeration. There were more of these, Bitsakis says. Had to be. This represents a mature technology. You don't build something this sophisticated without a tradition of earlier, simpler versions. "And it all disappeared," Freeth finishes the thought. "The entire technological tradition. Lost." They make another discovery buried in the corrosion. A signature. A craftsman's mark. The inscription is badly damaged. They can only read portions through digital reconstruction. Made by, name unclear, on the island of Rhodes, in the unclear year. Someone's name. Almost readable, almost recoverable. The linguistics team works for months. Digital enhancement, pattern matching with other Greek inscriptions, probability analysis. They get close. The name starts with P, might be Posidonius, might be someone else entirely. But Rhodes is clear. Rhodes had a famous school of astronomy. The Rhodian school. Hipparchus studied there. Posidonius taught there. Both men were geniuses of ancient science. One of them, or someone in their circle, made this machine. Freeth traces his finger across the inscription on the computer screen. "You changed the world and nobody knows your name. Your greatest work sat in darkness for 2,000 years. Bitsakis stands beside him. Their earlier antagonism feels like ancient history. "We know now. Maybe that's enough." Is it? You build something this brilliant and the world forgets you completely? The work survived. That's what matters in the end. The work survived by pure accident. If those sponge divers had taken a different route that Easter Sunday, but they didn't, and Stais noticed what everyone else ignored, and Price became obsessed when he could have dismissed it. And we have technology now that lets us finally understand it. Bitsakis pauses. Well, understand 80% of it. Freeth smiles slightly. The other 20% will drive some future researcher insane. Good. They can write papers arguing with our interpretations. That's how science works. They publish in 2006. Multiple papers, different journals, Nature, Science, archaeological journals, engineering journals, making the same argument from every angle. The scientific community is forced to acknowledge what they can no longer deny. Ancient Greeks possessed technological sophistication far beyond anything historians believed possible. Replicas are commissioned by museums worldwide. The reconstructions work perfectly. Wind the handle, bronze gears click and turn. The cosmos unfolds in calculated mechanical motion. News media covers it. Ancient computer finally decoded. Greek genius revealed 2,000 years later. But questions remain. Fundamental questions with no answers. Where are the other mechanisms? Where did this technology come from? Where did it go? Who was the maker whose name almost survived? Present day. The Antikythera Mechanism sits behind protective glass in the National Archaeological Museum, Athens. Tourists photograph it. School groups shuffle past. Most people spend 30 seconds looking at the most sophisticated artifact from the ancient world. The placard reads, Antikythera Mechanism, bronze and wood, circa 60 BCE, astronomical calculator recovered from shipwreck 1900. 8 words cannot possibly explain what they're seeing. Freeth returns to Athens every few years. makes the pilgrimage, stands before the mechanism like a pilgrim at a shrine. He's older now. Grayer. His obsession became his career. 3 books published, hundreds of lectures delivered, documentary films watched by millions. He's the world's leading expert on something most people still don't know exists. "What else could you do?" he whispers to the silent gears behind the glass. "What did we lose when you disappeared?" A young woman approaches, college-aged, backpack slung over one shoulder. "Excuse me, are you Tony Freeth?" He turns. "Yes?" "I'm writing my undergraduate thesis on evidence of lost ancient technology. I'm using your work as the foundation. I just wanted to say, thank you. You made me want to become an archaeologist." Freeth smiles. This happens more often now. "What's your thesis arguing?" "That there were definitely more of these mechanisms, multiple examples, that we're looking at the survivor of a whole technological tradition that we've lost. I think there might be others still out there, waiting to be found." "I think you're absolutely right," Freeth says. "Keep looking." The student leaves excited, her whole career ahead of her. Freeth stays, studying the mechanism through the glass. He thinks about Stais sometimes, the junior archaeologist who first recognized what everyone else dismissed, who spent 30 years being mocked by his colleagues, who died without recognition. "We proved you right," Freeth says quietly to Stace's ghost. "Took a century, but we proved you right." He thinks about Price, the physicist who became obsessed when he could have dismissed the whole thing as someone else's problem, who died before modern technology could answer his questions. "You were so close, Derek. So close to understanding." He thinks about the unknown maker on Rhodes, the engineer whose name they almost recovered, whose signature is just barely visible after 2,000 years of corrosion. "I wish we knew your name. You deserved fame, recognition, history books. Instead you get this, a fragment of inscription and a handful of researchers who appreciate your genius." The mechanism doesn't answer, just sits behind glass, bronze and wood and mystery, the most sophisticated scientific instrument created before the Renaissance. Deep underwater, off the coast of Antikythera, the original wreck site lies mostly empty. The sponge divers took most of the obvious treasures in 1900. Later expeditions recovered more fragments. But the Mediterranean seafloor is vast. Ships sank here regularly for millennia. Roman trade routes, Greek merchants, pirates, storms that came out of nowhere and sent vessels to the bottom. A remote-controlled submarine glides across the rocks. Marine biology survey, looking for unusual species in the deep zone, not searching for archaeology. Its lights sweep across sediment, rocks, scattered amphora fragments that mark 1,000 forgotten wrecks. A shape catches the camera, too regular to be natural. The submarine's AI flags it automatically. Bronze, heavily corroded, roughly rectangular, about the size of a shoebox. The submarine marks the GPS coordinates, takes several high-resolution photographs, then moves on. It's programmed to catalog biological specimens, not investigate every piece of ancient debris littering the Mediterranean. The coordinates are logged, filed in a database, stored with 10,000 other markers from the ongoing survey. Will someone check, follow up, another mechanism waiting in the dark? Or will it sit for another century, another millennium, or forever? The submarine's sonar pings once more across the deep, then fades into distance. The darkness returns. Pressure, silence, the weight of 2,000 years. And somewhere in that darkness, bronze gears wait, patient as the sea itself, holding secrets about what ancient peoples knew, what they built, what they lost. The ancient Greeks looked at the sky and saw patterns, mathematics, predictability, They believed the cosmos operated by rational principles that human minds could grasp, could model, could predict with bronze and mathematics. They were right. They built proof, encoded it in gears, wrote instruction manuals explaining how to use their machine. Then that knowledge vanished. The technology lost, the tradition broken, leaving only one corroded survivor to whisper across 2 millennia. We were here. We understood. We created. We mattered. Progress isn't inevitable. Knowledge isn't permanent. Civilizations rise and build wonders, then fall and forget how. The march from primitive to advanced isn't a straight line. It's fragile, contingent, one shipwreck away from being lost entirely. But some mysteries refuse to stay buried. Some genius refuses to stay forgotten. Some sponge diver surfaces at exactly the right moment, gasping about bodies that turn out to be bronze. Some junior archaeologist looks at what everyone else ignores. Some physicist becomes obsessed when he could stay comfortable. Some mathematician and some skeptical Greek physicist stop arguing long enough to see what the ancient world was trying to tell them. The mechanism sits in Athens, waiting, still not fully understood. Maker still unnamed. More gears probably still resting on the seafloor, but every year, more people stop, look, wonder, ask questions. And somewhere, a student is writing a thesis. A researcher is studying textual evidence. A marine biologist is accidentally mapping coordinates. The next discovery is coming. Another voice across the centuries. Another piece of proof that our ancestors were smarter than we ever gave them credit for. The gears will turn again. The mysteries will speak. The ancient engineers are patient. They've waited this long. They can wait as long as it takes for us to finally understand what they tried to tell us. We were brilliant, they whisper through corroded bronze. We understood things you thought you invented. We saw the cosmos turning and built machines to match its motion. And if we could do this, what else did we create that you haven't found yet?